The Baltimore Ravens could steal Eric Bieniemy from the Kansas City Chiefs to become their next offensive coordinator. We talk about that. Other Ravens offensive coordinator candidates, looking at what John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta had to say at their end of season press conference, and more coming up next here on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I am your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. We are here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today, being here with us. We are free and available on all platforms, including over on YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less in their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com. Promo code Locked On. We return here. It is a Monday. Championship weekend in the NFL is officially set. We got Bills getting eliminated by the Bengals. We got Jaguars getting eliminated by the Chiefs. So it sets up that Chiefs and Bengals AFC Championship. Then in the NFC, you got the Cowboys getting bounced by the 49ers. And then you have the Giants getting trounced by the Eagles. So you have that Eagles and 49ers matchup. So Ravens, they obviously get eliminated in the wild card round, looking ahead to the 2023 offseason and the 2023 season in general. And they're looking for a new offensive coordinator. Instead, we're going to be talking about just how the Ravens could potentially steal a very high-profile candidate from one of their, I guess you could call it a rival, maybe a soft rival, to become their next offensive coordinator, and Eric Bieniemy from the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll talk about some other names that Jeremy Fowler of ESPN had on his card for prominent names. That Jeremy Fowler also putting out multiple candidates for the Ravens offensive coordinator position over the course of the weekend. We'll dive into those guys as well. And we'll also continue talking about what John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta had to say during their end of season press conference. So a lot of juicy stuff today here on Locked On Ravens. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel on YouTube if you haven't already. It is free to do so. We are on YouTube 5 days a week in video. So if you like Ravens news, analysis, updates you want to watch here on the channel, be sure to hit that like button, turn notifications on, subscribe to this channel as well. In an audio form, it's the same show, both audio and video form. So whether you're listening on your way to work or cooking or cleaning or doing whatever, we are here for you again, 5 days a week, Ravens updates, analysis, and more. But let's talk about Eric Bieniemy now of the Kansas City Chiefs. And you might be saying, Kevin, why would Eric Bieniemy leave the Chiefs, who have had a juggernaut offensive unit for the past however many years, it feels like forever, but however many years it's been? Why would he leave Kansas City for a lateral move to go to Baltimore as an offensive coordinator? The situation with Eric Bieniemy is very complex. It's very difficult. And there's a lot to break down with it. So we'll be focusing on Eric Bieniemy in this first segment before moving into other candidates in the second segment. But so for Bieniemy, the short history for Eric Bieniemy is that he was hired by Andy Reid to be the running backs coach in Kansas City in 2013, which is pretty funny because Bieniemy was actually coached by Reid. Bieniemy played in the NFL, and he actually played for the Eagles under Andy Reid. So player-coach relationship now turns coach-coach relationship. In 2018, Bieniemy was promoted to offensive coordinator after Matt Nagy left to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears. And it was a hit, first of all. They were first in the NFL in yards per game and points scored in 2018. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl together in 2019, and they have been a very good offense under Eric Bieniemy. They ranked number 1 in pass yards per attempt and number 6 in rush yards per attempt in that first year in 2018. 2019, their Super Bowl year, 2nd in passing and 20th in rushing, so a little downturn in rushing there. Although the Chiefs, they can be kind of weird with their running back usage, I would say. I know there's been some controversy in terms of how they use the running backs. 2020, 3rd in passing, 12th in rushing from yards per attempt. 2021, they were 9th in passing, 7th in rushing. And then this year in 2022, obviously still in the playoffs here in the AFC Championship, Chiefs were number 1 in passing and 8th in rushing. Now, for Bieniemy and just how the Chiefs call plays and what their offense looks like, first of all, their offense what Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid run is pretty much it's the Andy Reid version of a West Coast offense. And for those that, might not be familiar with that it places more of an emphasis on passing as opposed to rushing. And it's more horizontal based, where it's a short passing game. So it's based on timing and route running. It's like, I think it comes from the nickel and dime version of that offensive system from Bill Walsh and what he used to do. So it's a lot of that timed up routes, getting the ball out quickly and making sure that you get the ball into your playmakers' hands and they can work in space, find the soft spots in a defense and stuff along those lines. It's been very successful for them. But in Bieniemy's case, there's been a lot of controversy. There's been a lot of controversy as opposed to maybe other offensive coordinators in the league or even other play callers in terms of how much is Eric Bieniemy actually calling the plays? How much of an influence does Eric Bieniemy have in this offense? Is it Eric Bieniemy's offense or is it Andy Reid's offense? Now, the Andy Reid effect, it is real. Andy Reid is one of the most talented coaches in this league. But there is the factor here for Bieniemy where people, I guess, so Bieniemy's interviewed for I can't even, it's been a lot. It's been a lot of head coaching jobs over the past 3-ish so years, but he hasn't gotten any of them despite what Kansas City has done on the offensive side of the ball. Now, there are multiple reasons for that. Part of it is the fact that people just don't know, how much is Bieniemy calling the plays? How much freedom does he have in that offense? Is it Reid? Is it Bieniemy? Is it Mahomes, right? What is it with that Kansas City offense? Also, Bieniemy has some legal issues, which we'll get to in a couple minutes here. I'll dive into those and what that could mean. But for what the Ravens have right now, Bieniemy, from a football perspective, probably would be one of their top options. But the questions surrounding him are if he is handed the keys to an offense and kind of gets out of the Andy Reid shadow there, which it feels like has been kind of cast over him, how good would he be in that instance? And especially for head coaching opportunities, how good would he be if he is handed the keys to a team outside of the Andy Reid shadow? So again, the question, why would he make a lateral move? Why would he go from what Kansas City has been offensively to Baltimore? Why would he not just stay in Kansas City? Is it even plausible? Well, Bieniemy's contract is actually up after this season. Bieniemy's signed a couple of one-year deals throughout the last couple of seasons. And so he signed a one-year deal in 2022. So that deal expires in 2023. And in talking to someone who covers the Chiefs, he believes that the best opportunity for Eric Bieniemy to maybe catapult himself into a better shot at getting a head coaching opportunity would be if he actually leaves Kansas City, goes somewhere else as an offensive coordinator, is able to, I guess, prove himself and call the plays there on his own, where it's not the questions of, is it Andy Reid? Is it Eric Bieniemy? Because there have been conflicting reports. Andy Reid outright said it after the playoffs, or might have been during the playoffs in 2022, saying, yes, Eric Bieniemy calls the plays, but Andy Reid is also we just want the plays to get in. A lot of people have input, but the person says that Bieniemy might have a better shot of going somewhere else and kind of getting out of that Andy Reid shadow. There's apparently been some drama there as well. So that also has an impact. Bieniemy is also not liked by a couple of former players, LaShawn McCoy being one of them, former, obviously, Eagle star, but did play for the Chiefs under both Andy Reid and Bieniemy. And he spoke out in a very harsh way about Bieniemy and kind of the stuff that he did not like in that situation. So Bieniemy himself, I guess, is a controversial figure, but from a football perspective, he is a part of this. It's not like he's just sitting around doing nothing and being like, oh, all right, he's not riding the coattails of Andy Reid here, just being like, well, I'm not doing anything. He's been a part of that offense. I think it is a joint effort between Reid and Bieniemy and Mahomes. And there's been plenty of conversations. I personally believe that Bieniemy's football resume has done enough to get him a head coaching job, but it just hasn't come to fruition. Now, from a football perspective, I think that Bieniemy would probably be one of my top choices, but I did mention the legal issues that Bieniemy has had over the course of his life. And there's a decently long laundry list of them. First one coming here, 1988, there was a bar fight and there was disorderly conduct and fighting in public. 1990, interfering with a firefighter. 1993, arrested for allegedly harassing a female parking attendant. In April 2001, Bieniemy was arrested for driving under the influence. So, all stuff, obviously, I do not condone in the slightest personally. There's no room for that, for me, and really should be for anyone. There should be no room for that. But it feels like that is also a reason why teams might be, I guess, I don't know if the term is scared away, but have not made the effort to get Bieniemy a head coaching job. And Bieniemy's interviewed for a ton of those gigs, right? But again, if the Ravens see that stuff, and we know the Ravens culture, we understand the legal stuff and what their policies are, that stuff is a no-fly zone for them. So there's that to consider for the Ravens. Obviously, it's a big part of everything. You got to weigh everything: the football, the legal stuff. It all comes together into one, and some outweigh the others, right? You got to put more stock in some as opposed to the others. There's stuff that is more important, both ethically and morally. But for the Ravens, if Bieniemy does want to escape the Andy Reid shadow and he's looking for other offensive coordinator opportunities to help maybe catapult him into a head coaching role, maybe a year or two. Like if Eric Bieniemy were to hypothetically come to the Ravens, have success as the play caller in Baltimore, reinvent that offensive system, Lamar gets his weapons, and Bieniemy has a year or 2 years of very successful Ravens offenses. We see growth, we see improvement from where they are. That is the key for Bieniemy in terms of saying, hey, look, I did it in Kansas City for all those years with Reid and Mahomes. Now I'm doing it somewhere else with whether that's Lamar or somewhere else. That, I think, for me, based off everything, and there's still a lot to dive into in that situation. Again, it's very complex. It's very complicated in terms of just how much Bieniemy is involved in that offense from a play caller perspective, from other perspectives too. But there is a chance that if Bieniemy does want to take that different route and leave Kansas City after his contract expires, if the Ravens are truly interested, they have an opportunity if they want to swipe in and take away Eric Bieniemy from the Kansas City Chiefs. So we'll see what happens there. But there are other candidates to dive into in this whole situation. So we're going to be talking about those next. Don't go anywhere. A bunch of high-profile candidates, lesser-known candidates. A lot to talk about here left on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, and I am officially continuing my win streak in fantasy basketball, 14-0. We are riding that win streak very high right now. I'm hoping my guys can continue to contribute. But if you want a different twist on fantasy, be sure to check out PrizePicks. And PrizePicks has a bunch of different games and formats you can play. It's super easy to play also, and you can have a ton of current entries as well. And how it works, you pick 2 to 5 players, and if they will go score more or less in their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. So zero projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch, including the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, college basketball, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. They have save and fast withdrawals, and they're currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to PrizePicks.com to sign up from the daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. You deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100. We return here. It's our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher is still with you here. Again, thank you so much for tuning in with us today, making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow along in audio form as well, and be sure to make your second listen Locked On NFL. I host a Monday show over there, so today we actually talk with Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers, Louis DiBiase of Locked On Eagles, Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs, and how those AFC Championships games could go. So be sure to head over there, check that out. If you want more me, I'm over there on Locked On NFL on Mondays. But let's talk about the Ravens' continuing search for their offensive coordinator. We just talked about the potential of Eric Bieniemy in that situation, but Jeremy Fowler, again, has been reporting names all weekend that either are on Baltimore's radar firmly or the Ravens have requested to interview. So we'll get into some of those names now, figure out if there are any trends we're seeing with these names so far. So Fowler first reported that the Ravens were requesting to interview Zach Robinson, who is the pass game coordinator over in Los Angeles with the Rams. Now, Robinson has had a pretty interesting path. Was actually an analyst over at PFF before getting brought in by Sean McVay. So this would be a McVay hire. This would be a part of that McVay coaching tree, where I know a lot of people are clamoring right now for a McVay tree hire or a Shanahan tree hire. This would be a McVay tree hire. the Rams have spoken really brightly of Zach Robinson in terms of what he has brought. McVay seems to really like all his football expertise, knows a lot about the quarterback position. Robinson was actually a quarterback in the NFL, so knows a thing or two there. 2022 obviously was not a wonderful year for the Rams, just in general, but offense-wise, they were 29th in passing, 27th in yards per attempt, so he's only 36 years old, so would be on the younger side of a hire. And one of those bright, young, innovative minds, I think, could definitely bring in some sort of general expertise where he could, again, be working with the coaches and working with the players. I think it'd be pretty solid overall. So that's the first reported interview or requested interview by Jeremy Fowler. And then there were other reports throughout the days this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The Ravens are going to look at Browns wide receiver coach, Chad O'Shea. Now, O'Shea has been in the league for a while in terms of his coaching experience, has worked with a number of different teams. Kansas City was actually in New England for almost a decade with Bill Belichick from 2009, 2018, obviously won the Super Bowl over the Atlanta Falcons, that overtime game that they went to there. So he was a part of that championship team. And the Patriots have had their fair share of pretty good wide receivers over there. He is now again in Cleveland. Cleveland's offense in 2022 did feature a couple of really nice receivers. Amari Cooper had a really good year for the Browns in 2022. Donovan Peoples-Jones established himself as a not top flight, but a pretty decent wide receiver option over there as well after being a 6th rounder. Still wish the Ravens would have capitalized on that, but he's in Cleveland now. So O'Shea would be, I guess, solid. I'm interested to know more about kind of his experience, kind of what his vision for an offense would be, but that is reported. Mary Kay Cabot of the Cleveland.com reported that. So we'll see what happens there. Then the Ravens also putting in an interview request for Dave Canales, who is the Seahawks pass game coordinator, quarterbacks coach over there. He is 41 years old, and he was big in the development of Geno Smith this year. Obviously, Smith being a journeyman quarterback type player was revitalized. He had a resurgence in 2022. And looking at the Seahawks offense and their stats this year, Seattle was the 10th rated pass offense and the 7th rated rush offense. But I think the revitalization of Geno Smith in his career also, worked with Russell Wilson while he was there. He is a long-time Seattle coach. He has been in Seattle for a very long time. So he's getting a shot here for, again, 41 years old. So more on the younger-ish side of things. I think it'd be solid. Now you have to kind of see what happens. The Seahawks have a couple of really good receivers over there in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Their tight end usage is iffy sometimes. They brought in Noah Fant from the Broncos in that Russell Wilson trade, and they used him and Will Dissly and Cody Parkinson kind of in like a trio tandem. So while one guy wasn't necessarily getting all the love over there, Canales is kind of familiar with using the 3 tight ends in a role where they can each contribute. So I think that'd be a positive. Obviously, Mark Andrews is your number one, right? You're going to use him the most, but maybe for an Isaiah Likely or a Charlie Kohler or a Josh Oliver, if you are able to bring him back into the fold as he is a free agent this offseason. But then the Ravens, it was reported they were going to go is for an interview with Vikings pass game coordinator Brian Angelicino, who is another guy who I think has really transformed that Vikings offense. Now, Kirk Cousins, obviously, there's plenty of controversy about who Kirk Cousins is as a quarterback and what he's about. But the Vikings this year in 2022, the 13th best pass offense. Kirk has not been horrible. Like, he's not a bottom 3 quarterback. He's, not this elite player or anything, but they have gotten the most out of Justin Jefferson, who's been really good over there. Adam Thielen, another really good wide receiver. They don't really have a tight end game. I mean, I guess they did later in the season when they acquired DJ Hawkinson, but I think, again, it's different opportunities for them to explore what these different teams, different offenses, but there is a trend here. And the other 2 names I'll quickly mention from Jeremy, well, I guess 4 names I'll mention from Jeremy Fowler from a report that included Eric Bieniemy, is that the Ravens have a couple of other, I guess, prominent names on their radar, Bieniemy being one of them. Then Frank Reich, we talked about him a bit on Friday's episode, former Colts head coach, Eagles offensive coordinator. Also Byron Leftwich, who was the Bucs offensive coordinator. The Bucs were not great this year, especially on the offensive side of the ball. 19th in pass offense. They were the worst team in rush offense this year, 32nd dead last in the NFL. other names that Fowler mentions internally, James Urban and T. Martin could draw looks from them. So the Ravens wasted no time. Plenty of names across the board in terms of potential reported candidates for them. But there is that trend. And I was talking about, are there trends here? You have the Rams pass game coordinator, Browns pass game coordinator / wide receiver coach, Vikings pass game coordinator, Seattle quarterback coach / pass game coordinator, Frank Reich, Eric Bieniemy, Byron Leftwich. It seems like there is a trend there, and the Ravens are clearly trying to get those innovative minds. I personally think this offensive coordinator should be one that lets Lamar Jackson spread his wings, assuming Lamar is back in a Ravens uniform. That, to me, is one of the key aspects. Honestly, probably number one aspect of what this offensive system should look like. It should be to the benefit of Lamar Jackson, where, look, you don't have to completely abandon your identity as a run team. You don't have to do that. But being able to shift into more of an effective pass offense that teams actually kind of fear you in that aspect. Plus, you can run the ball as effectively as you do with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. It all has to come together into one with that. So again, there's plenty of time for the Ravens to go through all their options, continue to request interviews, go through everything and make sure no stone is unturned here. But I'd say a pretty promising first list of options. Other guys the Ravens could request. I'm still a big fan of Bobby Slowick, the pass game coordinator. I think that would be a very solid hire for them. You know, Joe Brady is someone. I know Nathaniel Hackett has been a name that's been popped up a couple times by people. So there are options. And there are plenty of teams with offensive coordinator openings. There are going to be openings filling up left and right. But I'm gonna double down on it. I do think the Ravens is the most attractive option for a coach coming in, assuming Lamar's back, right? That's the big kicker. Lamar has to be back in order to have that come to fruition. But with the apparent commitment to redoing the wide receiver room, or at least bringing talent into the wide receiver room by John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta, and with the other pieces they have on offense in the running back room, the tight end room, the offensive line room, even the fullback room, if you want to go that far, I think Baltimore's a pretty attractive option. But we are going to dive into what Harbaugh and DeCosta had to say in that end of season press conference. Plenty of little nuggets to dive into there. So be sure to stay tuned. We still have a lot to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And the NFL playoffs are here, and we're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with a $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. And there were plenty of bets throughout the course of this weekend. There was the first touchdown score that I think went pretty viral on Twitter, at least, where someone had Travis Kelce at +600, Dallas Goedert at +1,200, Jamar Chase at +900, and Dalton Schultz at 1,500. $5 bet won the guy almost $73,000. So incredible. There are plenty of possibilities over at FanDuel. It's on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets. Win or lose at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're back rounding out our final segment here of Locked On Ravens Monday edition. Kevin Ostreicher still here with you. Didn't go anywhere. And be sure to, again, like and subscribe here on YouTube. Follow along in audio form. Really grateful for the support. It was just my 900th consecutive episode on Friday. Actually, this marks 901. We do 5 days a week. I've never missed an episode since back in 2019. And also, I'm doing Locked On NFL on Mondays. Be sure to make your second listen Locked On NFL to see more of me over there. But let's now talk a bit about what John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta had to say. It was a very important press conference on Thursday. They addressed a lot of the questions, the big questions, stuff that we have talked about on this show surrounding the team right now. A lot of talk had to obviously be about Lamar Jackson because that is the biggest question with this Ravens team. And there were a lot of good points that both had to make. DeCosta pretty much not wanting to comment on any trade talks regarding Jackson if they had to franchise tag him. But I mean, it seems like they were hopeful. I'll say the word is, it seemed like they were hopeful that the two sides will be able to agree on a deal, but maybe they do have to franchise tag him in 2023. Will Lamar play on the franchise tag? I don't know. That's another question, but it does seem like both sides probably will be together in 2020. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I think a lot of people are hoping for too. And, John Harbaugh was asked, he said, they have both said that they want Lamar at the center of their team. And is that much the case today as it was this time last year? And John Harbaugh said 100%, 200%. I mean, the Ravens want him there. It seems very obvious, but it does take two to tango, as Eric DeCosta said. The Ravens have to want him to be there, and Lamar Jackson himself, he has to also want to be in Baltimore. So obviously this has come down to guarantees, is what all the reports are saying in terms of whether he would get fully guaranteed or 113 million or 133 million, all these different numbers getting thrown out here. Bottom line, Lamar is going to get a huge deal. If the Ravens don't pay him, someone else will. I'll go back to I'll say it again, mystery box. Those who have listened to me before and maybe have caught a show or two here and there know what I'm talking about. Is a Family Guy reference where Peter can either have a boat or a mystery box. And Peter says, well, I want the mystery box because it could be a boat. And Peter says, well, we could have the boat or we could have a mystery box, and that could be a boat. So for the Ravens, they can either have Lamar Jackson or they can have a mystery box of quarterback, and that quarterback could end up being Lamar Jackson. And there's no, Lamar Jackson's one of one. He's unique. There's no replacing Lamar Jackson. But to me, Lamar is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And I do understand there's more to it than just like, oh, well, you don't have to replace him, because it's different when you have a quarterback on a $45 million a year deal, $50 million a year deal versus a rookie contract, right? It gives you more roster building options when you don't have a guy on the big contract. But I would much rather have Lamar on the big contract that I think he has earned, and then not have to go back into the middling quarterback carousel. There's the potential of that. There's also the potential the Ravens hit big. There's also the potential the Ravens do not hit big and there's a bust. So Lamar gives you, I think, the most stability, and he's proven it. So it seemed like, again, the Ravens clearly made the stance, to at least John Harbaugh, that he wants him there. And Eric DeCosta said the same thing. John Harbaugh also said that Lamar Jackson is going to have input in the offensive coordinator position moving forward, which I think is obviously so huge for them in terms of what happens there. But in terms of stuff that's not relating to Lamar Jackson or offensive coordinator, I guess this kind of has something to do. Eric DeCosta did say that the wide receiver position is certainly something they're going to look at, because, this year did not go the way they wanted it to, didn't end up the way they wanted it to. So Eric DeCosta did say that through the draft, free agency, potential trades, they're going to build the best team they can to compete each and every week. So kind of some GM speak thrown in at the end there, but it did seem like DeCosta seemed like he was committed to maybe addressing that position. Now, again, the question is, do you believe him this time around? Because we've kind of heard something similar-ish every year for a couple years now. But is this year they finally go out there and get a DeAndre Hopkins or a Brandon Cooks or Adam Thielen or Mike Evans, whatever splash that may be? Or do they sign a veteran, kind of on a one-year deal, draft a third rounder, and that's that? So we'll see what happens there. Cornerback-wise, DeCosta talked a little bit about what he could envision there. He said that they're going to talk to Marcus Peters and figure that out. And, maybe he'll be back, maybe he won't, was kind of the sense I was getting there. But he also mentioned other guys such as Pepe Williams and Jalen Armour-Davis and Brandon Stevens and even Kyle Fuller, guys who either were supposed to contribute or they had high hopes for. That, obviously Fuller got injured in week 1 and that ended his year. So I do think corner's a position they need to look at and look to address. But we'll see. My personal goal for them this offseason would be for them to draft a high-level round 1 corner, bring back Marcus Peters on a team-friendly deal if he decides to do that, and then you have Humphrey and then kind of 2 cornerback 2/3s in a high draft pick and in Marcus Peters. So, Marcus Peters on like a $30 million 3-year deal is not going to do it. I just don't think they can afford that. Plus, I don't think his play this year warranted that. But if you can get him on a 2-year, $12 million deal, it's more than enough. I think that's perfect for me. Now, but it's a matter of what Peters wants and whether he's looking. It does feel like Peters wants to stay in Baltimore based off of everything. It seems like he really has enjoyed his time with the Ravens. So maybe that's the route, and it's kind of like a la Jimmy Smith, where he's just back with the Ravens on team-friendly deals. So we'll see. And then DeCosta also talking about draft picks, saying that, obviously in an ideal world, they'd like to have draft picks there, and there are multiple avenues they can explore there. Obviously, the Ravens trading away their 2nd and a 5th rounder for Roquan Smith. They traded their 7th rounder away in the Sean Wade deal a couple years ago. Only 5 draft picks, and they're not in line to get any compensatories this year as well. So DeCosta said they're going to use the picks they have, but they might want to do some stuff there. And in an ideal world, he did say that, they'd have more picks, but for them, it is what it is. They have the picks. They're going to make them if they can. They're going to always be. DeCosta loves those trades. He loves the draft day trades. So I wouldn't be shocked if they make a trade or two, especially maybe trading down from 22. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow in audio form. We are daily for you 5 days per week. Be sure to turn notifications on so you don't miss an episode. And when we get back here tomorrow, it's more Ravens talk from us. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you right back here tomorrow.